The mysterious signal. In a quiet corner of the galaxy, far from the bustling trade routes and shining hubs of alien civilizations, Earth's deep space listening station hummed softly in the night. It was a peaceful evening. For decades, humanity had been scanning the stars, hoping to find a sign of intelligent life. While they had made contact with a few alien species, nothing prepared them for the signal they received that day. Officer Mia Carter, a seasoned communications specialist, was sipping her coffee when the console beeped. At first, she thought it was another routine transmission, perhaps another weather report from a distant colony or a message from a nearby outpost. But as she glanced at the screen, her heart skipped a beat. The signal wasn't human. "Commander Davis," Mia called out, her voice trembling. "You need to see this." Commander Davis, a stern but kind man in his 50s, walked over, his boots echoing against the metallic floor. "What's going on, Carter?" It's an alien signal," Maya stammered, pointing at the screen. "And it's not like anything we've received before." Davis leaned in, studying the data. The signal was urgent, repeating over and over. It wasn't just random noise. It was a call for help. Mia quickly translated the message using the station's advanced decoding software. When the words finally appeared on the screen, both of them stared in shock. "To the people of Earth, we call upon you. Only Deathworlders can save us. We summon your fleet." Deathworlders. The word sent a chill down their spines. Humanity had always known that Earth was a harsh planet, filled with predators, diseases, and extreme weather. But to the rest of the galaxy, it was considered a death world. And humans, born from such a dangerous environment, were seen as terrifying creatures. "Why would anyone summon us?" Mia whispered, her voice barely audible. Commander Davis frowned, his mind racing. "That's what we need to find out. Contact the United Nations Space Command. They need to see this immediately." Within hours, the signal had been transmitted to Earth's leaders and top scientists. The room was filled with the hum of debates and hurried conversations. On a large holographic display, the message blinked steadily, as if demanding an answer. "They're desperate," said Dr. Elena Kim, a leading xenobiologist. "Whoever sent this knows what humans are capable of. They need warriors, not diplomats." "But why us?" asked General Hassan, a grizzled veteran with decades of experience. "There are countless advanced civilizations out there. Why would they risk calling Deathworlders?" "Maybe it's because we're the only ones who can handle it," Elena replied. "If the enemy is as dangerous as this message suggests, they probably think we're their last hope." The room fell silent, as everyone considered her words. Humanity had come far since its early days of space exploration. They had joined the galactic community, a loose alliance of alien species, but trust had always been fragile. Most species saw humans as unpredictable and dangerous. And now someone was willing to bet everything on them. President Nora Vance stood at the center of the room, her sharp gaze sweeping over the gathered officials. "We can't ignore this," she said firmly. "If someone is calling for help, we have a responsibility to respond. But we need more information. Who sent the signal? And what are we walking into?" Meanwhile, light years away, the source of the signal flickered on the edge of extinction. The Yalorians, a peaceful and ancient race, huddled in the ruins of their once beautiful cities. Their enemy, the Crocs, was closing in. Ruthless and relentless, the Crocs had already destroyed 3 of their colonies. The Yalorians' fleets were shattered, their defenses crumbling. Elder Velara, the leader of the Yalorians, stood before a council of her people. Her golden skin glowed faintly in the dim light, her eyes filled with both fear and determination. "We have sent the signal," she announced. "Now we must pray that the Deathworlders answer." "Do you think they will come?" asked one of the council members, his voice trembling. Velara nodded slowly. "Humans are not like us. They thrive in chaos. They have faced threats their entire existence and survived. If anyone can stand against the Crocs, it is them. But we must be prepared for the cost. The Yolorians had heard stories of humanity's wars, their resilience, and their willingness to fight. To summon such beings was a gamble, but it was their only chance. Back on Earth, the decision was made. A reconnaissance team would be sent first to confirm the situation. The United Nations Space Command scrambled to prepare their ships. Admiral Riva, known for her sharp mind and fearless leadership, was chosen to lead the mission. Standing before her crew, she addressed them with a steely determination. "This is not just another mission," she began. "We've been called because someone out there believes in us. They believe we can do what no one else can. But make no mistake, this will be dangerous. We don't know what we're facing, but we do know one thing. Humanity never runs from a fight." The crew erupted in cheers, their spirits ignited by her words. The Deathworlder fleet was ready to answer the call. As the first ships launched into the void, the mysterious signal continued to echo across the stars, a beacon of desperation and hope. Humanity was on its way. Humanity's dark reputation. As the Deathworlder fleet prepared for its mission, the Alien Council's message spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every corner of the galactic community whispered of Earth's involvement. The Yolorians' plea for humanity's help sent shockwaves through peaceful civilizations, many of whom feared humans more than they feared the Crocs. To outsiders, Earth wasn't just another planet. It was a death world, a place of violent storms, fierce predators, and countless ways to die. Its people had evolved in an environment where survival was a daily battle. This made humanity resourceful, resilient, and to other species, utterly terrifying. A meeting of fear and doubt. In the grand halls of the Galactic Assembly, representatives of countless species gathered to discuss the Yolorians' desperate call. Their shimmering holograms filled the room, each species more anxious than the last. "We cannot allow the humans to be involved," barked Ambassador Trellick, a tall, insectoid being with glistening carapace and many twitching legs. "They are a danger to the galaxy. Their warlike tendencies are well documented. They are savages," hissed an Aurelian diplomat, their translucent skin glowing faintly. "No species should ever rely on Deathworlders for salvation. What if they turn on us next?" From the far end of the room, a single voice broke the clamor. Elder Villara, the Yolorian leader, stood resolute, her calm demeanor silencing the others. "It is not savagery," she said firmly. "It is strength. You sit here in fear while the Crocs devour entire worlds. We call humanity because we cannot afford to wait for your debates. They are our last hope." The assembly murmured in disbelief. Villara's words stung. The peaceful species of the galaxy had always relied on diplomacy and advanced technology to resolve conflicts. But the Crocs were not interested in peace. They were conquerors, driven by an insatiable hunger for destruction. No amount of diplomacy could stop them. And deep down, the Galactic Assembly knew Villara was right. Humanity's uneasy place in the galaxy. Meanwhile, aboard her flagship, Admiral Riva studied the galaxy's reaction to the Yolorian signal. She wasn't surprised by the fear and suspicion. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy had always been a double-edged sword. While humans were valued for their innovative technologies and adaptability, they were also viewed as unpredictable. Stories of Earth's violent history, from ancient wars to modern conflicts, were the stuff of alien nightmares. To many, humans were not saviors, they were weapons. Riva's thoughts were interrupted by Lieutenant Marcus, her second in command. "Admiral, the Yolorian envoy is requesting a private audience." Riva nodded. "Send them in." The holographic image of Elder Villara appeared in her quarters. The Yolorian leader's golden skin shimmered faintly, a sign of her species' advanced evolution. Despite her composed exterior, her voice carried a note of desperation. "Admiral Riva," Villara began, bowing her head, "I am grateful that your people have answered our call. But I must ask, why? Your species owes us nothing. and the Crocs are a danger even to you." Riva leaned back in her chair, her sharp eyes studying the alien leader. "Why?" she repeated. "Because that's what humans do. We fight. It doesn't matter if it's for ourselves or for someone else. If there's a fight worth fighting, we're in. But let me ask you something, Elder Valera. Why us? Why not the Galactic Assembly?" Valera hesitated. She had expected the question, but still found it difficult to answer. The Assembly is paralyzed by fear. They see the Crocs as unstoppable, and they see you as unpredictable. But I see something different. I see beings who have faced extinction and risen stronger. The Crocs are monsters. Admiral, to defeat a monster, we need something the Crocs fear. Riva's lips curled into a faint smile. "And they fear us." "Yes," Valera admitted. "They do. The weight of a dark legacy." The next day, as the fleet approached Yalorian space, Admiral Riva addressed her crew. Her words were broadcast to every ship, her voice steady and commanding. "Crew of the Deathworlder fleet," she began. "You've all heard the whispers. Out there, the galaxy sees us as monsters. They think we're dangerous, unpredictable, and maybe even cruel. But here's the thing. They're not entirely wrong." The room fell silent. "Humanity is dangerous," Riva continued. "We were forged on a planet that tried to kill us at every turn. We fought wars, faced famine, disease, and disasters. And every time, we came out stronger. That's what makes us different, but it's also what makes us capable." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. "The Yalorians call us because they believe in what we can do. And maybe, just maybe, it's time the rest of the galaxy sees what humanity is really made of." The crew erupted in cheers, their spirits ignited by her words. Despite the fear surrounding their mission, one thing was clear. They were ready to show the galaxy that being a Deathworlder wasn't a curse, it was a gift. The arrival. As the Deathworlder fleet entered Yalorian space, they were greeted by a scene of devastation. Burned-out colonies floated lifelessly in the void, their charred remains a stark reminder of the Crocs' brutality. Yalorian refugees huddled on overcrowded space stations, their faces etched with fear and despair. For the first time, the humans saw the true scale of the Crocs' atrocities. Admiral Riva's jaw tightened as she surveyed the carnage. "This isn't just a mission anymore," she said quietly to Marcus. "This is personal." The fleet began deploying humanitarian aid to the Yalorian refugees, even as they prepared for war. For the Yalorians, it was their first glimpse of humanity's dual nature. They saw the terrifying Deathworlders, capable of unimaginable violence, but they also saw compassion. It was a contradiction they hadn't expected, and it gave them hope. The battle was coming, and humanity's dark reputation would soon be tested in ways no one could have predicted. Assembling the fleet, the decision was made. Humanity would answer the Yalorians' desperate call. But preparing for war was not a simple task. Humanity's Deathworlder fleet, a name both feared and respected across the galaxy, had not been fully mobilized in years. Now it would have to be assembled quickly, and it would have to be ready for anything. A global call to arms. On Earth, the announcement spread like wildfire. The President of the United Nations stood before a sea of cameras, her voice calm but firm. "Today, humanity faces a choice," she began. "A distant species has reached out to us, not for diplomacy, but for survival. They believe in us because of our history, our strength, and our resilience. We are their last hope, and we will not let them down." The world reacted with a mix of fear, pride, and determination. News channels buzzed with images of the Yalorians' plea and the horrifying destruction wrought by the Crocs. Citizens volunteered in droves, soldiers prepared for deployment, and factories worked around the clock to produce advanced weaponry. Earth's united resolve was something rarely seen, and it sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity was ready. The rebirth of the Deathworlder fleet. Humanity's most advanced warships were docked at orbital stations across the solar system. Known as the Deathworlder fleet, these vessels were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering, built for speed, adaptability, and firepower. Admiral Riva, the fleet's commander, walked through the bustling corridors of her flagship, the Havoc's Wrath. The ship was a beast of a vessel, bristling with weapons and protected by cutting-edge shields. Its crew of 5,000 represented the best humanity had to offer: veterans, scientists, engineers, and even first-time recruits eager to prove themselves. In the hangar, mechanics worked tirelessly on sleek fighter ships, while soldiers drilled in formation. Riva paused to observe a group of new recruits as they trained in zero-gravity combat. Their movements were swift, precise, a reminder of humanity's adaptability. She allowed herself a moment of pride before moving on. The fleet's success would depend on every single person aboard. Unlikely allies. While the fleet was being prepared, a small Yalorian envoy arrived to meet with Earth's leaders. Elder Velara herself stepped aboard the Havoc's Wrath, her golden skin shimmering under the ship's bright lights. She was accompanied by 2 aides, their nervous glances betraying their unease in the presence of humans. Admiral Riva greeted her with a firm handshake. "Welcome aboard, Elder Velara," she said. "I hope you find everything to your satisfaction." Velara nodded, though her eyes lingered on the towering human soldiers standing nearby. "Your reputation precedes you, Admiral," she said. "I can see now why the galaxy fears your kind." Riva smirked. "Let's hope the Crocs feel the same way." The 2 leaders sat down for a briefing. Velara outlined the Crocs' tactics, how they overwhelmed their enemies with sheer numbers and brute force. The Yalorians had tried to fight back, but their ships were no match for the Crocs' relentless assault. Riva listened carefully, her expression unreadable. "And what do you expect from us, Elder Velara?" she asked. Velara hesitated. "We expect you to do what no one else can. To win. Unleashing humanity's ingenuity." Back on Earth, the brightest minds were working overtime to give the fleet every possible advantage. Dr. Elena Kim, a leading scientist in experimental weaponry, oversaw the development of a prototype energy cannon. This weapon could change the course of the battle, she explained to General Hassan during a demonstration. It's designed to disable enemy ships without causing collateral damage. But it hasn't been tested in a real combat scenario. "Perfect," Hassan replied dryly. "We'll test it on the Crocs." Humanity's ability to innovate quickly was one of its greatest strengths. While other species relied on tradition and established technology, humans were willing to take risks. The fleet's engineers modified their ships to be faster and more maneuverable, while their soldiers trained in unconventional tactics that would catch the Crocs off guard. The final countdown. As the fleet neared completion, tensions ran high. Families said tearful goodbyes as soldiers boarded their ships. Factories pushed their workers to exhaustion, knowing that every bullet and every piece of armor could mean the difference between life and death. Admiral Riva stood on the bridge of the Havoc's Wrath, gazing out at the assembled fleet. Hundreds of ships, from massive dreadnoughts to agile fighters, floated in formation above Earth. Each one carried the hopes and fears of humanity. "Status report," she ordered. Lieutenant Marcus, her second-in-command, stepped forward. "All ships are fully armed and ready, Admiral. The fleet is awaiting your command." Riva nodded. "Good. Inform the crew. We launch in 12 hours. A message to the galaxy." Before departure, Admiral Riva addressed not only her fleet but the entire galaxy. Her message was broadcast to every corner of the galactic community. "This is Admiral Riva of the Deathworlder fleet," she began. "We have heard the Yalorians' call, and we are answering it. To the Crocs, I have only one message. You have made a grave mistake. You thought the galaxy would bow to your terror, but now you face humanity. And we do not fear monsters." Her words sent shivers down the spines of both allies and enemies. Across the galaxy, species who had doubted humanity now watched with bated breath. The humans were coming, and they were bringing the fight. Departure. At the appointed hour, the fleet began its journey. Engines roared to life, and one by one, the ships disappeared into the void. Earth watched as its defenders left to face an enemy that had already crushed so many. In the silence that followed, only one thought remained. Would humanity's dark reputation be its greatest strength, or its ultimate undoing? The answer lay in the stars. The first encounter. The Deathworlder fleet emerged from hyperspace with a thunderous ripple, its presence announced by hundreds of shimmering warships. The fleet hung in the void like a constellation of steel and fire, its advanced weapon systems humming with restrained power. As the ships adjusted their positions, the Yalorian distress beacon grew louder. Admiral Riva sat in her command chair aboard the Havoc's Wrath, her gaze fixed on the main screen. The ruins of a once thriving Yalorian colony loomed before them, its shattered cities floating in eerie silence. Smoke and debris drifted aimlessly in the vacuum of space, a graveyard of hope. "This is worse than we imagined," said Lieutenant Marcus, his voice grim. "No survivors detected in the colony." Riva's jaw tightened. "What about the Crocs? Any signs of their fleet?" "Not yet," Marcus replied. "But if they're still in the sector, we'll find them." A haunting scene. The fleet began to deploy reconnaissance teams to investigate the ruins. Dropships descended onto the surface, their engines kicking up clouds of ash as they landed amidst the rubble. The Yalorian architecture, once elegant and ornate, now lay in ruins, its beauty marred by scorch marks and collapsed structures. Commander Elise Tan led the first team on the ground. Her soldiers moved with precision, scanning the area for any signs of life or hostile activity. They found neither. Instead, they discovered evidence of the Crocs' brutality. Melted craters where buildings once stood, scattered remains of Yalorian artifacts, and claw marks gouged into the walls of surviving structures. This wasn't just an attack, Tan reported back to the fleet. It was a massacre. Riva's voice came through her comms. "Understood. Gather what intel you can and return to the ship. We need to stay sharp. This isn't over." The trap is sprung. Just as the reconnaissance teams began their retreat, the fleet's sensors lit up with activity. Dozens of red blips appeared on the radar, moving in fast. A Crocs battle group had been lying in wait, and now it was closing in from all sides. "Enemy ships inbound," Marcus called out. They must have been hiding in the debris field. Riva sprang into action. "All hands, battle stations. Prepare to engage." The Crocs ships were monstrous, jagged behemoths that radiated menace. Their designs were brutal and functional, built for one purpose: destruction. As they approached, they opened fire, unleashing a barrage of plasma bolts that streaked across the void. The Deathworlder fleet responded with precision. Human warships moved like predators, dodging the incoming fire and returning it with devastating accuracy. The Havoc's Wrath fired its main cannons, cutting through the Crocs' vanguard and leaving a trail of wreckage in its wake. Fighting the unknown. Despite their initial success, it became clear that the Crocs were not an ordinary enemy. They fought with a level of ferocity and coordination that rivaled humanity's own tactics. Crocs fighters swarmed the fleet's larger ships, targeting weak points with deadly precision. Meanwhile, their capital ships used brute force to overwhelm smaller vessels. On the ground, the reconnaissance teams were pinned down by a surprise attack. Crocs infantry, towering and grotesque, emerged from the ruins, their clawed hands tearing through human defenses. Commander Tan and her team fought valiantly, using the environment to their advantage. Requesting immediate extraction, Tan shouted over the comms as she fired her rifle at an advancing Crocs warrior. "We're outnumbered down here." Riva responded swiftly. "Extraction teams en route. Hold your position." Dropships descended into the chaos, their gunners providing covering fire as the ground teams scrambled aboard. The soldiers barely made it out, the last of them leaping onto the ramps as the Crocs closed in. As the dropships ascended, they unleashed explosive charges, collapsing the ruins and burying the enemy beneath tons of rubble. Adapting under fire. In orbit, the battle raged on. Admiral Riva quickly realized that conventional tactics wouldn't be enough to defeat the Crocs. She ordered her fleet to adapt, using the debris field as cover to stage ambushes and counterattacks. "Divide into strike groups," she commanded. "Draw them into the open and hit them where it hurts." The Deathworlder fleet split into smaller units, each one luring segments of the Crocs' forces away from their main formation. It was a dangerous strategy, but it worked. Human ships moved with unparalleled agility, exploiting every weakness in the Crocs' relentless assault. In one daring maneuver, the destroyer Ironclad feigned a retreat, leading a group of Crocs ships into a narrow section of the debris field. Once inside, the Ironclad unleashed a salvo of mines, obliterating its pursuers in a fiery explosion. The turning point. After hours of brutal combat, the tide began to turn. The Crocs' forces were scattered and disorganized, their numbers dwindling under the relentless assault of the Deathworlder fleet. Admiral Riva seized the opportunity to deliver the final blow. "All ships, converge on the Crocs' flagship," she ordered. "We end this now." The fleet concentrated its firepower on the massive vessel at the center of the Crocs' formation. The flagship was heavily armored, but even it couldn't withstand the combined might of humanity's warships. Its shields flickered and failed, and a final devastating barrage from the Havoc's wrath tore the ship apart. As the Crocs' flagship exploded in a blinding flash, the remaining enemy ships retreated into hyperspace. Humanity had won its first battle against the Crocs, but the cost had been high. The aftermath. The Deathworlder fleet regrouped, licking its wounds. Several ships were heavily damaged, and casualties were significant. On the ground, the surviving Yalorian refugees emerged from hidden shelters, their faces etched with a mix of relief and sorrow. Elder Villara contacted Admiral Riva. "You saved what remains of our people," she said, her voice trembling. "For that, we are forever in your debt." Riva's expression was stoic. "We did what we had to. But this isn't over. The Crocs will be back. And next time, they'll be even more dangerous." As the fleet prepared to move on to its next objective, one thing was clear. Humanity had proven itself as a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy now knew the true power of the Deathworlders, and the Crocs had learned to fear them. But the war was far from over, and the greatest challenges still lay ahead. The desperate battle. The Deathworlder fleet's triumph in the first skirmish with the Crocs was short-lived. Scattered reports from Yalorian intelligence indicated that the Crocs' main fleet was converging on their homeworld, Yalara Prime. The planet, a shimmering jewel of culture and innovation, was the heart of Yalorian civilization, and it was days, if not hours, from total annihilation. Admiral Riva stood at the central command console aboard the Havoc's Wrath, her face set in grim determination. The main screen displayed Yalara Prime, a vibrant world surrounded by orbital stations, its defenders pitifully few compared to the storm approaching. "They won't survive this alone," Lieutenant Marcus said, his voice heavy. "The Crocs' fleet is at least 3 times the size of ours." Riva didn't flinch. "Then we'll hit them with everything we've got. Relay the orders. Full speed to Yalara Prime. We're not letting that planet fall." The calm before the storm. As the fleet raced through hyperspace, Riva gathered her officers for a final briefing. The air in the room was thick with tension, but every face was resolute. "We're walking into a trap," Riva began, her tone direct. "The Crocs know we're coming. They'll throw everything they have at us, and they'll expect us to crumble. But we won't." She activated a holographic map of the Yalara system, highlighting key points. "Here's the plan. The Crocs will aim to overwhelm us with numbers, but we'll use their aggression against them. Our heavy cruisers will draw their main fleet into the asteroid belt, where our destroyers and fighters will hit them from the flanks. Meanwhile, the Havoc's Wrath and a strike group will target their command ships, take out their leadership, and the rest will fall apart. Commander Elise Tan, newly returned from the surface mission, leaned forward. And what about Yalara Prime itself? If the Crocs land troops, the planet won't stand a chance. I'm assigning ground support teams to assist the Yalorian Defense Forces, Riva replied. This will be an all-fronts battle. Everyone has a role to play. Dismissed, and good luck. The arrival. The fleet exited hyperspace on the edge of the Yalara system, and immediately, alarms blared. The Crocs armada filled the void, a vast sea of jagged, menacing ships. At its center loomed a monstrous dreadnought, its size dwarfing even the largest Yalorian stations. Status report. Riva barked. They've already begun bombarding the outer defenses, Marcus said, his fingers flying over the controls. Yalorian forces are holding, but barely. Not for long, Riva muttered. All ships engage at will. Let's give them something to fear. The Deathworlder fleet surged forward, its warships cutting through the void like sharks in water. The first wave of Crocs ships met a wall of firepower. Missiles and plasma bolts lit up the darkness, creating a chaotic dance of explosions and debris. The turning tide. The Crocs, however, were relentless. Their sheer numbers began to press the Deathworlder fleet back, forcing the humans to fight tooth and nail for every inch of space. The asteroid belt turned into a battleground, with ships weaving between massive rocks while dodging enemy fire. Riva's strategy began to pay off. The smaller, faster human ships exploited the asteroids to outmaneuver the Crocs, launching devastating hit-and-run attacks. In one daring maneuver, the destroyer Shadowclaw lured a Crocs battle group into a dense cluster of rocks. The humans detonated concealed charges, collapsing the asteroids and obliterating the enemy ships in a single fiery burst. But the Crocs' flagship, the massive dreadnought, remained an ominous presence. Its cannons unleashed devastating blasts, tearing through human and Yalorian ships alike. Every time the fleet seemed to gain ground, the dreadnought pushed them back. We need to take that thing out, Marcus said through gritted teeth, or this battle's over. A bold move. Riva's mind raced. The dreadnought was too well defended for a conventional assault, but humans didn't thrive on conventionality. She activated the fleet-wide comms. This is Admiral Riva, she said. I'm ordering a direct strike on the Crocs flagship. We'll use the Havoc's Wrath as a decoy to draw their fire, while our bombers hit them where it hurts. All available ships cover the bombers. Her officers exchanged glances, but no one objected. They trusted her instincts. The Havoc's Wrath surged toward the dreadnought, firing its cannons in a relentless barrage. The Crocs flagship responded, its massive turrets locking onto the human ship. Explosions rocked the Havoc's Wrath, but its shields held, barely. Meanwhile, a squadron of human bombers slipped through the chaos, flying dangerously close to the dreadnought's hull. Their target was the massive ship's power core, hidden beneath layers of armor. As they released their payloads, the bombers peeled away, narrowly avoiding the retaliatory fire. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a chain reaction of explosions rippled across the dreadnought's surface. The Crocs flagship shuddered, its engines failing as fire consumed its core. The massive ship split apart, its wreckage scattering into the void. Cheers erupted across the Deathworlder fleet. Ground Zero. Even as the battle in space reached its climax, the fight on Yalara Prime raged on. Crocs landing forces had breached the planetary defenses, their ground troops advancing relentlessly. Human soldiers, alongside Yalorian resistance fighters, fought to hold the line. Commander Tan led the charge in the capital city, using urban terrain to outwit the larger and stronger Crocs warriors. Snipers took positions on rooftops, while demolition teams rigged key choke points with explosives. It was a brutal, close-quarters battle, but the humans' ingenuity and the Yalorians' determination began to turn the tide. When news of the dreadnought's destruction reached the ground forces, it was the boost they needed. The Crocs, now leaderless and disoriented, began to retreat. Human artillery pounded their positions, ensuring they wouldn't regroup. Victory, at a cost. By the time the battle ended, the Deathworlder fleet and their Yalorian allies stood victorious. The Crocs' armada had been shattered, and Yalara Prime was safe. For now. But the cost was steep. Dozens of human ships were destroyed, and the Yalorian defense forces were decimated. Admiral Riva stood on the bridge of the Havoc's Wrath, surveying the wreckage. "We won," Marcus said, his tone a mix of relief and exhaustion. Riva nodded, but her expression was somber. This was just one battle. The Crocs aren't finished. And neither are we. As the fleet regrouped and the wounded were tended to, Elder Velara contacted Riva. Her voice was filled with gratitude and sorrow. "You have saved my people, Admiral. We owe you everything." Riva's response was simple. "We don't fight for debt. We fight because it's the right thing to do." The battle had proven humanity's strength and resolve, but it also foreshadowed the challenges yet to come. The war was far from over, and the Crocs would not make the same mistake twice. Humanity's secret weapon. The Deathworlder fleet's victory at Yalara Prime was celebrated, but the celebrations were short-lived. Scattered reports confirmed the Crocs were regrouping, preparing an even larger force to retaliate. Time was running out. Admiral Riva, exhausted but unyielding, knew this next battle would not be won with brute force alone. It would require ingenuity and risk. A desperate plan. The fleet's command council convened aboard the Havoc's Wrath, their faces illuminated by the dim blue glow of the holographic map. The Crocs forces were regrouping at Lacrian Abyss, a system known for its volatile energy storms and gravitational anomalies. The terrain itself was a weapon, and the Crocs were positioning their fleet to lure humanity into a fatal trap. Riva studied the map intently. "If we engage them directly, we'll lose," she said. "Their numbers are overwhelming, and the Lacrian Abyss gives them the advantage." Lieutenant Marcus frowned. "Then what's the alternative? Retreat?" "No," Riva said firmly. "We hit them with something they don't expect, something they can't counter." Dr. Elena Kim, the fleet's chief scientist, cleared her throat. "Admiral, there is an option." She hesitated, as if weighing her words. "The experimental weapon. Project Nova." The room went silent. Project Nova was a prototype energy weapon designed to disrupt matter at the molecular level. It had been theorized to disable entire fleets without causing lasting environmental damage. But it was untested and extremely volatile. If it malfunctioned, it could destroy everything in the vicinity, including the fleet itself. Riva met Elena's gaze. "What are the chances it works?" 50-50, Elena admitted. "But if it does, it could turn the tide." Riva took a deep breath. 50-50 is better than zero. Prepare the weapon. We'll deploy it at the Lacrian Abyss, the calm before the storm. As the fleet prepared for battle, tension rippled through the ranks. Soldiers double-checked their weapons, engineers worked tirelessly on repairs, and the crew whispered about Project Nova. Few knew the full details, but everyone understood the stakes. Admiral Riva addressed the fleet in a broadcast that reached every ship, every soldier. Her voice was steady, commanding. "Today, we face an enemy that has brought fear and destruction to countless worlds. They think they can crush us with numbers, with brute force. But they don't understand what it means to be human. They don't understand our resilience, our ingenuity. We don't back down, and we don't break. Today, we make them fear us." Her words sparked a fire in the hearts of her crew. Whatever doubts they had were replaced by determination. They would follow her into the abyss if necessary, and they were about to do just that. Into the abyss. The fleet entered the Lacrian Abyss cautiously, its ships navigating the swirling storms and gravitational distortions. Lightning danced across the void, illuminating the jagged shapes of the Croc's armada waiting for them. "They're ready for us," Marcus said, his voice tight. Riva nodded. "Good. Let them think they have the upper hand. All ships, maintain formation and hold fire until my command." The Crocs, overconfident after their regrouping, surged forward, their fleet spreading out to encircle the Deathworlder ships. Plasma bolts streaked through the darkness, but the humans held their ground, evading and absorbing the initial assault. At the heart of the fleet, the Havoc's Wrath carried Project Nova, its energy core humming ominously. Dr. Kim and her team monitored the weapon closely, their faces lined with tension. "Status?" Riva asked, her gaze never leaving the screen. "Charging at 85%, Alina replied. "We'll be ready in 5 minutes." The decoy and the counterattack. Riva needed to buy time. She ordered the fleet to split into 2 groups, drawing the Croc's forces into the gravitational distortions of the abyss. The smaller, more agile human ships darted between the Croc's lines, luring them deeper into the unstable zone. "Admiral, they're taking the bait," Marcus reported. "Good," Riva said, "but it's not enough. Prepare the decoy maneuver." One of the fleet's dreadnoughts, the Resolute, surged forward, appearing to break formation. The Crocs saw the opportunity and pounced, concentrating their firepower on the lone ship. But the Resolute wasn't retreating. It was carrying a payload of experimental mines. As the Croc's ships closed in, the mines detonated, creating a chain reaction that obliterated an entire flank of their armada. The shockwave sent the remaining ships into disarray, their formation crumbling. "Now," Riva commanded, "deploy Project Nova." The unleashing of Nova. The Havoc's Wrath powered up Project Nova, its energy core glowing with an otherworldly brilliance. The weapon emitted a low-frequency hum that resonated across the fleet, sending a chill down every spine. "Target locked," Alina said, firing in 3, 2, 1. A blinding wave of energy erupted from the Havoc's Wrath, spreading out in a perfect arc. The energy passed harmlessly through the human ships but tore into the Croc's fleet with devastating precision. Their shields failed, their engines sputtered, and their weapon systems overloaded. One by one, the Croc's ships went dark, left adrift in the storm. The fleet erupted in cheers, but Riva wasn't celebrating yet. "Status report," she barked. Alina's face was pale. "The weapon overloaded. We're getting feedback." Before she could finish, a massive surge of energy rippled through the Havoc's Wrath, sending the ship into chaos. Consoles exploded, alarms blared, and the lights flickered. "Stabilize the core," Riva shouted. Her engineers worked frantically, and after what felt like an eternity, the energy levels returned to normal. The ship was battered but operational. The aftermath. The Croc's fleet was in ruins, their remaining ships retreating into hyperspace. The Lecrian Abyss, once a deadly battlefield, was now a graveyard of Croc's warships. Humanity had won again, but at great cost. Elder Villara appeared on the Havoc's Wrath's comms. Her voice was filled with awe. "You've done the impossible, Admiral. The Crocs are broken." Riva shook her head. "Not broken. Wounded. They'll come back, and we need to be ready." A glimmer of hope. As the fleet regrouped, Riva reflected on the battle. Project Nova had worked, but it was a double-edged sword, powerful but unpredictable. Yet it had given humanity an edge, a way to stand against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Back on Yalara Prime, the Yalorian people began to rebuild, inspired by humanity's courage. For the first time in generations, they believed in a future free from fear. And aboard the Havoc's Wrath, Riva prepared for the next chapter of the war. The Crocs had underestimated humanity once again, and she intended to make sure they never forgot the lesson they had just learned. A new alliance. The Lecrian Abyss was quiet now, its volatile energy storms swirling around the wreckage of the Croc's armada. The Deathworlder fleet, scared but victorious, drifted silently as repairs began. For Admiral Riva and her crew, this victory was not a moment to rest. It was a moment to decide the future. A galaxy watching. Across the galactic community, the battle had been broadcast through a network of long-range relays. For the first time, the galaxy had seen the full might of humanity unleashed. Fear and admiration rippled through alien societies as they witnessed the Crocs, a species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, humbled by the very Deathworlders they had long underestimated. On Earth, celebrations erupted. Cities lit up in honor of the fleet, families hugged loved ones who had returned, and the news hailed humanity as a force of hope in the galaxy. Yet beneath the celebrations, leaders knew the truth. The Crocs were not defeated, only set back. The galaxy had bought itself time, but time was not a guarantee of safety. Admiral Riva's dilemma. Admiral Riva stood in her private quarters aboard the Havoc's Wrath, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. The Yalorian sector glowed in blue, a fragile reminder of what they had saved. The Crocs' territories were marked in red, vast and menacing, stretching across countless systems. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock. It was Lieutenant Marcus. "Admiral," he said, stepping inside. "The Yalorian Council has requested a meeting. They're proposing an alliance." Riva raised an eyebrow. "An alliance?" Marcus nodded. "They want to formalize a pact between humanity and the Yalorians. They're offering technology, resources, and their remaining fleet to stand with us against the Crocs." Riva leaned back in her chair, considering the offer. "An alliance sounds good on paper, Marcus. But alliances require trust, and trust doesn't come easily between species like ours." The meeting. Elder Villara arrived aboard the Havoc's Wrath, her golden skin reflecting the soft glow of the ship's interior. She was escorted to the fleet's command chamber, where Riva and her senior officers awaited her. "Admiral Riva," Villara began, bowing slightly. "Once again, we find ourselves in your debt. Your fleet has saved my people not once, but twice." Riva nodded. "Gratitude is appreciated, Elder Villara. But I understand you're here with a proposal." "Yes," Villara said. "The Yalorian people cannot survive another assault alone. The Crocs will return, and next time, they will bring their full might. We cannot face them without you. And you cannot face them without us." Riva's eyes narrowed. "What are you offering?" Villara stepped forward, her voice steady. "Our technological advancements, particularly in energy production and shield systems, could enhance your fleet significantly. Our engineers have already begun adapting our systems to your ships during the repairs. We also have knowledge of Croc's tactics and weaknesses, gathered over decades of conflict." Riva crossed her arms. "And what do you expect from us?" "To stand with us," Villara replied. "Not just as saviors, but as allies. Together, we can form a coalition capable of resisting the Crocs and protecting the galaxy." Trust through action. Despite the Yalorian leader's sincerity, Riva wasn't entirely convinced. The Deathworlder fleet's strength lay in its independence, its ability to act without being slowed down by politics or diplomacy. An alliance could complicate that. But then came the reports. Yalorian engineers were already working side by side with human mechanics, sharing blueprints and techniques to optimize the fleet's damaged systems. On the ground, Yalorian refugees were assisting human soldiers in securing outposts, showing a willingness to contribute rather than merely rely on protection. Riva observed these interactions quietly, her skepticism softening. Perhaps trust didn't always require time. Sometimes it could be built in the heat of necessity. The Declaration. A week later, on the restored Yalorian homeworld of Yalara Prime, a historic event took place. In the Grand Council chamber, where the Crocs had once been poised to conquer humanity, and the Yalorians signed the Yalara Accord, a pact of mutual defense and cooperation. Admiral Riva stood beside Elder Villara as the agreement was formalized. The two leaders addressed a gathering of representatives from both species, their voices echoing across the chamber. "We stand here today," Riva said, "not as Deathworlders and Yolorians, but as allies. The galaxy has seen what happens when we stand apart. Together, we will ensure that no world falls to tyranny again." Vilara added, "Let this be the first step toward a future where strength is not feared but shared. Together, we will rebuild what has been lost and protect what remains." The room erupted in applause, the atmosphere charged with a sense of hope and unity. A growing coalition. Word of the Yalara Accord spread quickly, reaching the ears of other species across the galaxy. The once fractured galactic community began to take notice. Smaller species, long ignored or exploited by the Crocs, started reaching out to humanity and the Yolorians, seeking protection and a chance to join the alliance. Riva welcomed these overtures cautiously. "We can't save everyone," she warned her officers. "But the more allies we have, the stronger we become. The Crocs thrive on fear. We'll give the galaxy something else. Courage. A new beginning." As the Deathworlder fleet prepared for its next mission, the atmosphere aboard the Havoc's Wrath was different. Where there had once been tension and uncertainty, there was now determination. Engineers worked on integrating Yolorian technology, creating hybrid systems that boosted the fleet's capabilities. Soldiers trained alongside Yolorian fighters, learning new tactics and strategies. In her quarters, Riva received a message from Earth. It was from President Noravance. "Admiral," the president said, her tone proud, "what you've accomplished out there is more than a military victory. You've given humanity a place in the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Keep leading. The whole galaxy is watching." Riva leaned back in her chair, a rare smile crossing her face. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel hope, not just for humanity, but for the galaxy as a whole. The road ahead. The Crocs were still out there, regrouping and plotting their revenge. But now they faced a united front. Humanity, the Yolorians, and their growing coalition stood ready to fight back. The war was far from over, but the tides had shifted. For the first time, the galaxy believed it could win. And it all began with the moment the Yolorians summoned humanity's Deathworlder fleet, a decision that would reshape the galaxy forever.